Welcome, I'm Martina, your trusty guide through the pages of Camp Half-Blood and beyond. Grab your camp shirts, ready your weapons, and let's embark on this epic adventure together. This is Delphi Dispatches. We're in the later half of the season, so it's getting really jam-packed in every new episode we're getting, and I can only say I love it so far. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping stuff I want to get off my chest right now. I'm recording this episode literally at midnight, so I hope it won't affect the content too much, but I'm quite tired, but I didn't have any other time to record this episode. I also wanted to let you know that I planned a few things for after the season concludes, so we're still gonna keep doing the podcast episode per series episode, then we're gonna do one episode concluding the series. At least one episode on the behind the scenes documentary thing that's gonna come out. And I realized I never did like a proper introduction to myself as your host. So I want to do like a get to know your host kind of episode. It's probably gonna be a shorter one compared to the others. And I would like for you, if you're interested, to send in some questions. I'm gonna open up the Q&A poll on Spotify where you can ask stuff, and also you can, as always, DM me some questions or find some other way of communication if you want it, and I will gather them up for this episode and see what I can come up with. But now let's start off with our news, our Delphi Dispatches news segment. I think the biggest news of this past week was probably on the 5th of January. It was Walker Scoville's birthday. Our Percy Jackson turned 15 years old, which is like a reminder that this guy is like aging too fast for my tastes. I'm like, Disney, you need to renew for season 2 so they can start filming, because Walker is freaking huge now. We need like to have an age-appropriate cast. And since he is our favorite Percy and he's great, he got a lot of birthday wishes from all over the internet, from Ryan Reynolds to everyone who's working on Percy Jackson, to so many more people wishing him a happy birthday. And I'm not sure if it was on the same day, a day before or day after. He also hit 1 million subscribers on Instagram, so I'm gonna consider this a birthday present from the fandom to him. Also on this day, there was an interview released with Stream Wars. In that interview, Walker said in the whole arch scene where he's like poisoned, the like sickly pale skin tone you see is actually his natural skin tone. And they just had to put like red around his eyes and stuff. So Walker is quite pale, as we find out. On the 8th of January, so one day before we got the newest episode, there was a sneak peek released about episode 5, where we saw the talk with Ares and the trio. I'm not gonna talk like much about it, because I'm literally gonna talk about it in the episode segment later, so let's just go to the next news. And the next news is actually tomorrow. So this episode comes out on the 15th of January, and on the 16th of January we got a book news, and it's, I think, the first Rick Riordan Presents book news I'm going to talk about in the podcast, because if you're not familiar, Rick Riordan has also his own imprint. The Percy Jackson books are all published at Disney Hyperion, and his own imprint is called Rick Riordan Presents, where he features stories from other authors from different mythologies. The book that's gonna release tomorrow is from Sajni Patel, I hope I'm saying the name correct, and the book is called A Drop of Venom. And on the website Rick Riordan, it is described as a new YA epic fantasy retelling of the Medusa myth steeped in Indian mythology. So if you haven't got enough Medusa from the show, now you can have a bit more Medusa in this book. And I read like the back of the book and some like quotes that were posted online, and it's definitely gonna be on my to be read list, although this list is like huge and it seems to only grow and never get less. It's probably because I'm a really slow reader, and if I like a book, I'm gonna read it over and over again. This is why I probably read the Percy Jackson universe like 3 times last year, so you see where I'm getting at, right? Now we have a few like social media posts. We got the posters of the episodes, actually 4 and 5, since I'm recording so late on the day. I can also talk about the poster of episode 5. But first, let me talk about the poster of episode 4, which is quite basic. It's just the camera in the dead center of the poster, and you see the arch in the background. And the poster for episode 5, without spoiling too much, I mean, this whole episode is a spoiler, so I'm hoping you've seen at least episode 5 before you listen to this episode. On the poster for episode 5, we see Percy and Annabeth in front of the Tunnel of Love, and it has like this pink glow around it, and I think everyone is agreeing with me if I'm saying this is the ultimate Percy Bethan poster. Yeah, and in the background, like all the way in the back, it's like different rides from Waterland. Then we also have another video of the trio talking about the cast they're working with. The first one they talked about was Virginia Cole, who's playing Sally Jackson. What they said is like Virginia is an amazing actress and that they had some of the hardest scenes in this first season with her. And that for some reason she has like incredible chemistry with everyone. And she's also very wise. So Virginia Cole, daughter of Athena? Maybe. Then they talked about Dior Goodjohn, who plays Clarice, and that she's really caring and cares for everyone and is like a natural protector, and that she can scream like an opera singer, which is a comparison I've never heard before, but it makes sense somehow. And the last one they talked about was Charlie Bushnell, who plays Luke, and yeah, that he's amazing and one of the best actors they've ever worked with. And at the end, the guys are like complimenting him because he's ripped. We also got a few pictures of Percy and Grover and Echidna and Annabeth. There's also this little behind-the-scenes video where we see Walker in a Superman pose and getting pulled up by a harness. It's probably for the arch scene based on other behind-the-scenes videos we've seen. There's also a version of the consensus song, like a video where they put the consensus song and just put text to it so you can sing along, which I love. And we also got the Demigod Diaries for episode 4, which starts out with them in the like tram for going up to the arch. And then when they're like up in the arch, Walker is saying to whoever's filming, I guess, he's starting talking about a Star Wars movie and says, I quote, "I can say that this is Disney, right?" Anyways, after clearing that he can talk about it, basically, he says that he always wanted to have this like lightsaber fight outside in the snow, which is quite particular, I guess. Maybe it's in one of the Star Wars movies, I don't know. Then we get like this behind the scenes of the camera fight where we switch back and forth of when the CGI is already added, so we see the camera, and before the CGI is added. So basically Walker acting against the nothing, and he looks so sick all the time. Like not the oh my god you look sick as in good, like oh my god sick, do you need a doctor sick? So this like adds to the realness. And we also get like behind the scenes look at the stunt of falling out of the arch. And we also see that this is real fire. At least some of it was real fire they used in the camera spewing fire scene. And there was also like this picture slide posted of which hero are you, which was like kind of like you already know what you're gonna get based on your answer. And mine was Annabeth, which makes sense. I think I would be either Annabeth or Grover out of our trio. News on season 2. There is still no confirmation if we're gonna get another season. We're still gonna get our hopes up. Even though there have been a few cancellations of popular series in the last few days, like American Born Chinese and Our Flag Means Death, I think, were the two most recent ones that have been cancelled. But we're manifesting that everything's gonna continue to be good, and we're gonna get 5 seasons of Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and maybe even more adapting the other books. Now for the closing part of our news segment, the Rotten Tomato score. And as always, it's great. We have a 96% average on the tomato meter. We're still certified fresh, with 55 fresh reviews and 2 rotten ones. And the average audience score is at 84%, with an average of 4.3 stars and over 1,000 reviews. So still looking fresh. Now on to the Demigod Discussions of episode 5. A God Buys Us Cheeseburgers. This episode is about 39 minutes long, so a good length of the episodes we've got so far. The first thing we see after the recap of the last few episodes is our title card of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. And this time it's a bit different. It's not in the usual like blue water. We are in this murky green brownish kind of water, aka the Mississippi River. We're still underwater, but we pan up and see a helicopter, and there's smoke coming out of the arch. There are also a lot of like emergency services all around, and there are Annabeth and Grover, just the two of them. Annabeth sees these three old ladies knitting like humongous blue socks for some reason, and one of them, the middle one, snips the string, and they're like looking directly at Annabeth. What that means we'll find out later, but first they need to get away from the police because, of course, they're suspected in having something to do with the explosion in the arch. And they need to find Percy because Annabeth is sure that he's still alive. On their search for Percy, they come to the river. Who comes out of the river? None other than our very own Percy Jackson. And he immediately apologizes to them for pushing them down the stairs. And then we get a Persephone hug initiated by Annabeth, which is like so cute. Although Grover is like the odd man out here, standing like back and saying, "You're not as dead as we thought you'd be," which is a great line by Grover. Do you want to know what happened? And Percy gives them the really short version and tells them they need to go to Santa Monica because Poseidon will be there and is gonna help them, which is gonna be interesting. We're gonna meet the first parent of one of our trio. But we also find out that they're now fugitives because they crashed a train and exploded a national monument. So they start walking because they are not gonna get on any train or bus like that. And in the books, the next set of events happens in Denver, Colorado. And I looked on Google Maps how far it would be to go from St. Louis to Denver by foot, because I hope to the gods they're not hitchhiking. So according to Google Maps, it would take 13 days by foot or an 18-hour bus ride. So challenging. So I'm pretty sure we're not gonna go all the way to Denver now. On their walk, Percy realizes that the quest might be harder than they originally thought, because they don't know who stole the bolt or why or how deep everything goes. And Percy is like on rambling about this, and then he realizes that he's the last one to realize all of this, because the other two have figured that out. And he also apologizes and admits that his head was not in the game from the start. But now, since he fell into the river, everything feels kind of different somehow. He's like kind of wondering what this means for himself, that his father saved him. And then they hear a bike coming along the street and they hide behind these little concrete walls. I don't know what they're called. And they just want to wait until the bike passes. And by bike, I don't mean like a bicycle, I mean a motorbike. Percy says that they're gonna need to be detectives now, so may I introduce you to Detective Jackson, Detective Chase, and Detective Underwood, here to solve all your cases, demigod related or other. He also asks Annabeth why she's being weird since they left St. Louis. Percy thinks it's about the hug, which it isn't. And Annabeth admits that these three old ladies she saw were the Fates, and explains that someone is gonna die soon because one of them snipped a cord. And Percy apparently doesn't believe in fate, says everything is like his choice to make and nothing is preordained. I don't know if I believe in fate. This is gonna be a deep talk. Maybe I'll keep that for the Get to Know Your Host episode. Do I believe in fate? Nice. During their talk, we hear the bike always in the background, and suddenly it stops, like right next to them, and this man asks them if they need some help. It looks so cool. You see it from the other side of the road, basically, where this humongous man on the motorbike with a leather coat and helmet is sitting there on the bike, looking at them behind their little wall, and they're like just looking over the wall a bit like, nope, thank you, we don't need anything. And then they duck behind the wall again. But then this man tells them that they're so behind schedule. And our trio starts to wonder, why does this guy know about the schedule? He says that the summer solstice is just a few days away. And even though he likes a good war, he is not looking forward to this one. And as Percy's big cousin, he wants to help them. This is where Annabeth tells us that this guy is none other than Ares, god of war. And that he's also looking for the bolts, and Zeus sent out all his children to do the same. And here's one thing I really love. Ares calls them dummies. And if you remember, back in episode 2, Clarice called Percy also a dummy, so like father, like daughter. He says to them that there's a diner up the road and they should meet him there if they want his help. And then he just drives off. And it looks really cool because his like long leather coat is like flowing in the wind behind him. And only thing Percy says while he's riding off is, what kind of family is this? Because we learned last episode, it's always been a family matter. Then our trio finally arrives at the diner and we see Ares on a phone, and he explains to us that he's on the internet starting a Twitter fight, which is like, oh no. First of all, this is gonna date the episode because Twitter is now called X, even though no one calls it that, but it's also not that relevant anymore. But it would fit that Ares in the modern day, while being part of probably all the horrible wars that are going on in the world right now, is also a troll online. This just fits right in my head. He puts his phone away, and the first thing he says to them is like, your quest will fail, basically. And he actually pulls his phone out again and shows Percy a live interview of none other than his stepfather, Gabe. Yes, Gabe is on, I think, national television, claiming that Percy is involved in all the allegations of, like, destroying a national monument and also the disappearance of his mother. Yeah, it's not looking good for Percy. And Ares gives us the information that the FBI is spreading his picture, so it won't be quite as easy getting to Los Angeles as they thought it would. And I love that Annabeth is being snarky with Ares the whole time throughout this conversation, because she asks him why he's here and not looking for the bolt himself. He doesn't really answer that. He just tells us that Zeus and Poseidon will go to war even if they return the bolt. And our heroes are like, the oracle said if they return the bolt, there will not be a war. And Ares replies with, is that what she said? Or is that what Chiron said she meant? Which brings me to think I need to listen to that part of episode 2 or 3. That would be episode 3. And see how it actually played out. And since Percy is new to the family, as Ares puts it, he gives him a little history lesson about how Kronos, his grandfather, ate his children and Zeus made him barf them up. Then Kronos got cut into pieces and put into a bottomless pit. That's like the shortened version of it. If you want to know more about the Kronos myth, I highly recommend any mythology book. I mean, you could always read Percy Jackson, it's explained there. Ares sums it up pretty neatly. And here we also get one interesting line. There are so many good lines in the whole series. But Ares says, Olympians fight. We betray. We backstab. We will push anyone down a flight of stairs to get ahead. And that's why I love my family so much. And this feels like the embodiment of Ares. And he also says that Zeus knows there's a war coming and that Ares likes this because god of war. Of course he likes wars. Now Percy has heard enough, and Ares finally gives them his little condition to helping them. It's basically a side quest, so we're in the video game now apparently. He tells them that there's an amusement park up the road, and that he left his shield there when he last went there, and that they should get it back for him. If they get it back to him, he will get them to the underworld by lunchtime the next day. But Annabeth's not buying it, and Ares is getting quite angry with Annabeth, like he had enough of her snark, and he's saying, so do we have a deal, or am I killing all 3 of you so I can eat in peace? Where he's really getting intense. And as soon as they said they're in, Ares is back to nice, and the music is not tense anymore. So during this build up of anger, the music is getting tenser and tenser, and as soon as he is nice in quotes again, the music fits his mood. But there's one catch. Grover has to stay behind as collateral, so the demigods won't just run off. Percy and Annabeth refuse to split up again, but Grover agrees, and he says, if you wanted to kill us, we'd be dead by now, which is true. And he gets permission to walk them to the door at least. where Annabeth is warning him to not let him get into his head. And Grover, in turn, is motivating them to go get the shield and that he'll be back when they get back. But then they just leave, and I was like, no hug? I thought this would be the episode of hugs. Then we go to Waterland, which is this abandoned theme park, water park hybrid. And as Percy accurately states, it looks like something out of a horror movie. I would be really interested in what younger people think of it. I can't ask my niece because she is patiently waiting until I return home so we can watch the series together. But back to Percy, who actually admits that he's not seen a lot of horror movies, but this looks like a place they warn you to stay out of. And Annabeth admits that she has not seen a movie ever, like any movie. And this is such a sweet Percybeth moment. Percy says if they get out alive of this whole quest situation, they have to change that. This is this is really friendship bonding, showing your friend who's never experienced something new. Then they go through this admissions gate, and while Percy is turning this gate, there comes this dangerous looking machine basically down on him, and he freezes. And literally he just stops because Annabeth tells him so. And she's analyzing this machine, tells us that there are parts, or the whole thing is made out of celestial bronze, which we haven't actually heard before, at least not in the series. And Annabeth tells us that celestial bronze is from the mythical world. It would just pass right through a human, but if you're a monster or demigod, not so much. And Percy's wondering who would make something like that, and Annabeth just says, yeah, a god. But what god? Hephaestus, god of craftsmen. And as Annabeth is analyzing this machine further, she gets not sidetracked but hyper focused on the machine itself, and Percy needs to snap her out of it, which I think is Annabeth's ADHD showing a bit, because we have to remember she, like all the other demigods, has ADHD, but she figures out how it works and says Percy just to push through. And it actually works. This machine is not to hurt anyone, it's just to scare them. It's basically a counter of how many people go through. So Hephaestus would know if someone would come into his amusement park. We cut back to the diner with Grover and Ares, who is actually just on his phone, scrolling, which I can relate. And Grover tells Ares that they've met before. Ares is not very impressed, saying yeah, I've been around quite some time, little guy or something. And Grover, very proud of himself, says, I'm 24, which is, first of all, probably an ego boost for Grover, and second of all, it's a reminder for the viewers. Even though Grover looks like a teenager, he's actually in his mid-20s. And Ares just replies with, good for you. But Grover keeps on persisting and telling him that they met at the winter solstice on Olympus. And Ares thinks that Grover was a protester. And here I'm thinking, what kind of protesters are at the winter solstice on Olympus? Are they nature spirits and probably satyrs, since he just thought Grover would be one? And what are they protesting for/against? A reform? Protection against Zeus? Would be good. I'm imagining this like mob of dryads with like their shields saying no more Zeus, or I can't come up with something funny that would be on one of those shields. But Grover says he's actually a fan of Ares, and Ares doesn't believe it and says satyrs eat tofu, satyrs worship flowers, satyrs sing songs about their feelings, satyrs are not fans of mine. But Grover counters this with saying that satyrs are children of nature and nature is brutal, and he's continuing to butter Ares up, and it works. And we're gonna cut back to Percy and Annabeth, who are just wandering through Waterland. And they're not only wandering, they're also wondering why Ares would be in Waterland and leave his shield there when they think of Aphrodite. That Ares and Aphrodite had an affair in her husband's park. Which is like, oh no guys. This is why neither of them are the god or goddess of wisdom. And we get another glimpse at how this family is a huge mess. And suddenly there's this one ride that lights up. And the ride is called Thrill Ride of Love, aka the Tunnel of Love. One of the most iconic things in the first book. And Percy's like, yay, let's go into the scary ride. What could go wrong? And yeah, that's basically what they do. They get in and they're like on a boat in this dark tunnel, and it's like silent and quite dark for a few seconds. And then out of nowhere, music starts playing. And it's not just any music. It's What Is Love by Hathaway. I'm telling you, I laughed so hard. I watched this morning at 8, I think. And my roommates were still asleep because we work all like later shifts. I may have woken up one of my roommates. I laughed so loud. I'm still sorry for that. So Katarina, if you hear this, sorry. I hope it won't happen again. But it probably will. Sorry. I'm not the only one that is confused. Annabeth is as well, and Percy I think too. And Percy says that he thinks he's heard this song before, probably in an orthodontist's office, which is like, old people will feel really old, but all I could think of is like, oh, so Percy had braces canonically? Or at least something adjacent, because he went to an orthodontist? But guys, I'm telling you, top 2 worst places to be. First, dentist, second, orthodontist. I don't know what the fear of like dentists is called. Like fear of spiders is called arachnophobia. You know what? I'm gonna look that up. Give me a second. Oh, wow. It's dentophobia. So yeah, I suffer from dentophobia. But the music is not the only thing we have. We also have this amazing light show. And it's not just like patterns. It's telling the story of Hephaestus, how he was born, how he was cast down from Olympus by Hera, how he was rejected by Aphrodite. And Percy tells us that his mom has told him this story as well a lot of times. And it shows that this is what the gods are like to each other. This is the kind of family they are. And Sally was just trying to keep him away from all of them, or preparing him for when he got to them. So he'd be different, he'd be better. And then the music and lights cut out, and the ride suddenly gets really intense. They like ride through this cavern, and they near this like bad ending, and they see a room with this huge golden statue and a throne, and the statue has Ares' shield in its hands. So they jump out of the boat, and this scene made me wonder, can Annabeth swim? Are there swimming lessons at camp? I hope she can. And I hope that it was just like, the water was quite tumultuous in this ride, so she couldn't like concentrate. And she kind of screamed for Percy there. And he rescues her with his water powers, apparently. Because when they come to at the base of the statue, Percy does not know how to use his powers yet, and says that he figures it out as he goes, and that he at least did not save her on purpose, but we're happy that she is safe. And then they just look at the golden throne, and Annabeth figures out that it's like a machine that's connected between the statue and the throne, and she tries to figure out how to start the machine. But before that, we cut back to the diner with Ares and Grover. And the first thing that Ares says is that he hates kids, even his own kids, which makes me wonder, how did Clarice get her spear then? I don't remember if they stated it in the series already or if they're ever going to state it, but the spear that Percy broke during Capture the Flag was a gift from Ares. So is Clarice an exception to the rule? Maybe, maybe not. But he also says that he loves his job, except for the winter solstice, when everyone's kids show up and they have to sit through their presentations in quotes. And I'm wondering, what kind of presentations? Is it like, look, these people made this quest happen this year. These ones got claimed. We got new archery equipment. Or is it more like a PowerPoint party, which would be really weird in Olympus with all the Olympians? Ares just calls it the worst night of the year by far. And Grover starts to speculate that one of the kids maybe somehow walked off with the Master Bolt. Someone that Hades could have recruited. Someone who could slip away long enough to do it without being missed. And if you watch this with a critical eye, you see that Grover is trying to bait Aries, which is to say, the first time I watched it, it was just like my pure first reaction. And it was, like I said, in the morning, I just woke up. I did not get that Grover was baiting Aries. While Grover is speculating, Aries just says, not everything is a puzzle that needs to be solved. You're as bad as my sister, referring of course to Athena. And here Grover sees an opportunity to start bashing on Athena to gain more of Aries' trust. And of course he falls for it. He's saying, if she's so smart, why is she talking to an owl? And then we have like this really actually relatable line from Aries. It is like people only see what they want to see and ignore anything at all that doesn't fit in the story they like to tell themselves. And Grover agrees, saying, like, you being the one to find the lightning thief and not her. And here it cuts to his like typical interrogation scene shots where you can see like the camera is like from up down on their foreheads. And Aries is like a bit confused, I was too, saying, what do you mean by that? We both know your friend didn't steal the boat. And Grover just replies with, yeah, but Zeus thinks he did. Which is kinda all that matters, right? The last shot we get here is like Aries being mad that Grover outsmarted him somehow. And I'm like, oh no, is Grover gonna get killed? Hopefully not. From one intense scene to another intense scene. I think this scene that's coming up is my personal highlight of the series so far. We're back in Waterland, and we find out that this throne was a gift for Hera. Hephaestus made for her, but it had a little twist, because when you sit in it, you can never stand up again. All the gods tried and none succeeded, and in the end they begged Hephaestus to let Hera free, and that he could have Aphrodite as a wife in exchange. And to get the shield, one has to sit on the throne, and the other one has to get the shield and go to Aries. They kind of start arguing on who will stay behind. And this is the first instant, guys. This is the first time Annabeth calls Percy Seaweed Brain. Yes, it happened. It's Seaweed Brain time, everyone. And Percy tells Annabeth why she is here. Yeah, I'm just gonna quote it. When I was choosing my team, I told Chiron I needed someone who would not hesitate to sacrifice me if the quest required it. And that someone is Annabeth. And Percy accepted that the fates were right. There's no getting around this. It isn't about who the oracle or the gods chose. Percy tells Annabeth that she is better at all of this mythical stuff than him. And he gives her Riptide, but not like in the arch as a sword, but in pen form. Not as a trick, but to let her know that he trusts her, and this is like a sign that the pen is mightier than the sword. Both figuratively and literally in this case. Like, it is a symbol of his trust that he gives her the pen. I got goosebumps, and I think this is the point where I started crying. I probably cried throughout this whole scene. But before Percy sits down on the throne, he wants Annabeth to promise him something. But Annabeth already knows and says she will not leave the underworld without his mom. Which is like, oh no. My heart, it's kind of breaking. I mean, I know what's gonna happen according to the books. But what if they change it? My heart. And Percy also asks Annabeth that if the quest succeeds, if she could come back and see if she can free him somehow. And Annabeth says like she already planned on it. And without further ado, Percy sits down and we hear gears starting turning. Percy mentions that the throne is warm and we see these gold threads kind of. It's like a mix of threads and liquid encasing Percy's body slowly, and I don't know if it's like turning him to gold or just encasing him in gold. And Annabeth repeatedly wants Percy to stand up, but he just can't and keeps saying, it's okay, I'm okay, until he's fully golden. And that just shows you how caring Percy is, that he's using his last words not to reassure himself, but to reassure Annabeth that he's okay. And as soon as Percy is like fully encasing gold, the shield falls down, so quest complete. But Annabeth, instead of grabbing the shield and running, she looks at the gears and tries to release Percy. While she's rattling around the gears, we see in the background a door opening. Like up on the balcony. This room has like a runaround balcony. And a man steps out and asks, "Can I help you?" And he asks if she needs help finding a way out. Blows his whistle and a ladder appears, basically giving Annabeth the easiest way out. And then she says, "I'm not leaving without my friend." Is this the first time Annabeth calls Percy a friend? I know Percy called Annabeth a friend earlier, but is this the first time she called him a friend? And this man is just persistent that what has been done cannot be undone. This is how it works. And Annabeth is like frustrated and just says, how would he know? And this is where we find out, yeah, he knows because he built it. Girl, that guy is Hephaestus, god of craftsmen, blacksmiths, and I think volcanoes too. But Annabeth is not really impressed. She just says if he's not going to help, he should leave her alone to focus. And Hephaestus doesn't really like that and says he's not one to be pushed around and wants her still to leave, saying if she walks away with the shield, Athena will be proud of her again and all will go back as to how it should be. But now we have an Annabeth speech and it's just too good. I'm just gonna try my best to not read it, act it out somewhat. It isn't how it should be. It isn't. Eat or be eaten. Power and glory and nothing else matters. Ares is that way. Zeus is that way. My mother is that way. He isn't. He isn't that way. He's better than that. Maybe I was that way once. But I don't want to be that way anymore. I won't be like all of you. I just won't. And we have the shot of Hephaestus kind of turning away, and Annabeth wanting to go back on trying to free Percy by herself. And we hear this flute playing, which means Hephaestus had something to do with this. And the gears start moving again, and Percy gets ungoldified. The first thing we see is like he's taking deep breaths, which begs the question, did he get air encased in gold? Because the last one to try this was Hera, and she's a goddess, so I'm not sure if she needs gold if she needs air. So did Percy even get air there? Debatable. And then Hephaestus says, some of us don't like to be that way either, and offers to put in a good word with Athena for Annabeth, and tells her that she's a good kid, and basically leaves. And the next scene we have is Percy and Annabeth arriving back at the diner with the shield, which is huge. I mean, I know that the kids are small children, but it's just huge. And Ares looks kind of disappointed that both of them got back. And Percy cuts right to the chase, asking, where's our ride? And there we see the wildlife transporter. Ares tells them that this one goes straight to Las Vegas, and there they should go to the Lotus Casino where Hermes hangs out. And if they play their cards right with him, he will get his personal driver to get them to LA in minutes. He also throws them a backpack full of clothes, cash, and drachmas. Percy says they will not fail. Ares just wants to keep discouraging them because it's Ares, saying, your dad had plenty of kids he stopped caring about once he lost his interest. And Percy persists and gets up in Ares' face, basically threatening Ares. And here we have our smart protector friend Grover step in, who just says to Ares, thank you for the emotional abuse, the cheeseburgers, and the ride. We'll be out of here, out of your hair, basically. They get into the truck, and Ares slams the door shut behind them. Percy and Annabeth are quite suspicious that Ares didn't tell them everything or is lying, and Grover just confirms that Ares didn't tell the whole truth and that he thinks he knows who stole the lightning bolt. But of course we will not find that out until next week, because we need a cliffhanger, of course. And our credits roll. But before the episode is over, we have of course the sneak peek for next episode, which is the Lotus Casino. We have a view of Grover looking out of the top of the truck, one of those Is it a window? I don't know. We see Percy and Annabeth creating a rainbow with a prism, which means iris message time. We see animals on the street of Las Vegas. We hear Percy saying there's more to this than just a bolt. We see them going to the Lotus Casino, which literally looks like a closed lotus flower. And Lin-Manuel Miranda as Hermes. Yes. And he says, "Hey demigods, welcome." And it looks like they have a huge problem. They're running through the casino, and somehow there are only adults there. I mean, would be in a casino, but based on the casino of the books, maybe it's like separate areas. We also see Percy tackling some random person, it seems. Is it maybe the aforementioned personal driver of Hermes? Maybe. We also see Percy attempting on driving a taxi and promptly crashing it into a wall. And the last shot is Percy swimming. Is he already in Santa Monica maybe? But more on that next week. So now that we got all of the episode in, which was absolutely amazing, let's see our predictions from last week for this episode. Let's start out with the first thing I maybe got right. I said we would see the rest of the conversation with the Nereid and Percy, where she's warning him about the gifts and telling him to go to Santa Monica. We actually didn't see that part. Maybe we're gonna see it in a flashback, or Percy's just gonna tell us more about it. He says they're gonna need to go to Santa Monica. The part with the gifts was not specified, so we'll see about that. Then the things I did not get right, they didn't go to Denver, at least they didn't state they would go to Denver, which I explained earlier why they probably are not in Denver, probably somewhere in Kansas. Or wait, Missouri. I think St. Louis is in Missouri, right? Like either they're in Missouri or they got all the way through Missouri to Kansas. I think my geography is right. Another thing I didn't get right is the iris message to camp, which we saw in the teaser for next episode, so we're gonna push that away. And we also didn't get spiders. I mean, I said maybe spiders, but we didn't get them. But now on to the things I did get right. We saw the fates. We saw Aries. We got cheeseburgers, although we didn't eat any, apparently. We went to Waterland, had an extravagant tunnel of love. We met Hephaestus. We had our Grover and Aries one-on-one. We had Persebeth bonding time. We had a different trap than in the book, and I did call it. It was the Golden Throne. I mean, we saw a bit of it in the last week's teaser for this week, so it wasn't totally original on that one. And of course, the last week of the episode, our trio got onto a truck with animals to Las Vegas. Now, theories and predictions for the future. My prediction that we meet Athena this season still stands. I added another reason why, because we just talk about her so much. I mean, yeah, I know it's Annabeth's mom, and of course we're going to talk about her, but we've talked about her more than we've talked about, I think, Zeus. Probably equal with Poseidon, since our two main demigods are children of Athena and Poseidon. So I'm still gonna stick with we meet Athena. Yeah, specifically for next episode. Now we get finally the iris message. Maybe Percy is going to tell them more about what the Nereids said and why they need to go to Santa Monica. But first we of course go to Las Vegas, and in the Lotus Casino we meet Hermes. And we fall into the time trap, and our trio's trying to get out. And somehow they end up stealing a car or a taxi, and either they're going to attempt to drive themselves, which is probably going to go wrong, or they're going to kidnap Hermes' driver, or literally just pay him or play their cards right. And this driver, is it gonna be a mythological figure? I can't think of who it could be, because it's probably not Karen. And otherwise I couldn't think of anyone. And based on the last scene we saw in the teaser for next week, Percy's either gonna actually go to Santa Monica already next episode, or he's gonna have a dream where he's underwater. Also, some theories, they were not originally from me. I'm sure a lot of people have thought of these same things. That next episode is going to be a musical episode. I mean, I don't have huge hopes for it, but I would love it, just based on the fact that Lin-Manuel Miranda is here. And I would also love a cameo of Chris McCarroll. If you don't know who that is, this guy played Percy Jackson on Broadway in the Lightning Thief musical. He's great. And I want to ask Easter egg of the D'Angelo siblings. Speaking of Easter eggs, I didn't pick up on too many Easter eggs. Actually none, but I rewatched the last week's episode and I saw something else. In the book, episode 4 opens with our trio being on the train already. But how did they get on there and stuff? This is kind of explained in the book. There they meet a pink poodle. And some people were quite upset that the pink poodle was not in the episode. I was like, I actually do not care for Gladiola. But there was a pink poodle in the episode. Because when small Percy is learning how to swim on his swim trunks, there are poodles on there, so we still have some Gladiola. Now I have quite a few thoughts and feelings about this episode in particular. I think it is my favorite episode now. It is right up there with Medusa, but I think the Persephone scenes edged it up a bit. See what I did there? Edged it up. And I think the theme of today's episode was family problems or generational trauma, because the theme of episode 3 was victims of abuse, and episode 4 was probably mothers the theme, or parenting, something like that. I don't know if I like it or don't like it that they're not in Denver. I mean, it makes logistical sense that they're not in Denver, because Waterland isn't a real place, so it could be literally anywhere, and I actually don't mind if they're in Denver or not. I have to say I love the Grover and Aries talk. It has been hyped up quite a bit from Arian Simhadri on various interviews, and I absolutely see what he means. I love it. On the first watch, like I said, I just woke up. I was quite tired, and I did not get what was going on. I thought, is Grover the traitor? What is he trying to do? And on my second watch, I realized, oh no, he's baiting Aries. I'm so freaking dumb. This is why I'm not a child of Athena. I also love that the stairwell analogy runs throughout the story. If you don't know what I mean, the stairwell analogy is what Percy says on why he picked Annabeth. He says to Chiron, if the quest hinged on someone pushing Percy down a flight of stairs, Annabeth would be the one to do it. Then we had on the art, where Percy is literally pushing Annabeth and Grover down a flight of stairs to protect them. And then we have 2 stairwell incidents in this episode. The first one is with Aries saying that the Olympians would push anyone down a flight of stairs if it means winning for them. The second one is at the Golden Throne, where Percy admits Annabeth about the pushing down a flight of stairs because she's better than him at this. And this is basically how this analogy comes full circle. I'm really interested if they're gonna continue this analogy in the next 3 episodes that are left. But I loved seeing it throughout these 3 episodes here. Then the flute that Hephaestus plays, to control the gears that are moving, reminded me so hardcore of Hades Town, where Hermes has this, I don't know what's it called, train whistle. If you've seen or at least heard the songs from Hades Town, you know what I mean, and I really like it. I know it's a totally different kind of whistle, but just gave me the same vibes. Now, a scene I don't know what to think about right now is the Fates. In the book, Percy sees them before he even gets fully to camp. He sees them and kind of tells Grover, and Grover is freaking out. Here we have Annabeth seeing them, and it's not that dramatic, because when Percy sees them, it's slow, everything slows down around him, and he hears them snipping the cord over 4 lanes of traffic or something. And here in the series, it's kind of quick, and we don't get really deep into it. Maybe we'll get deeper into it on the ride in the back of the truck. But I also think it's good that the Fates are not that menacing as they were portrayed in the Percy Jackson book. Because in mythology, the Fates are not that scary, menacing things. It's just how life works, and there's nothing you can do about it. So I'm on the fence about this scene. And also one thing I'm like a bit weirded out by is some of the ADR in Waterland. ADR stands for Automated Dialogue Replacement, which is when the actors have to like redo the lines, they like reread them and they're gonna be placed over the footage. Most of the time it's like when you don't really see the actors' mouths moving, like you see them from the back or something's blocking their face, so it kind of fits. And sometimes it's made a bit weird so you can tell that it's ADR, but yeah, minor quarrels. But that's all for the Demigod Discussions part, and we're gonna hop right into the trivia trials. Before I'm gonna tell you the answers to last week's quiz, I want to tell you that I'm going to post the questions I'm asking in trivia trials on the Delphi Dispatches Instagram from now on, like either the day off or the day after the episode comes out, and you can also answer the questions there. I would like to see your answers. So, last week's first question was, if Echidna is the mother of all monsters, who is the father of all monsters? And the answer is Typhon. We actually meet Typhon in, I think it's the last Olympian, and he's quite a person. He's quite a dude. And the second question was, on Threads, Rick Riordan revealed what the name of the dog playing the Chimera is. Do you know it, or should we put her in a corner? If you didn't get the hint was referring to Dirty Dancing because the dog's name is Baby, and no one puts Baby in a corner. Now we have this week's questions. The first one is about Walker, our very own Percy Jackson, because on January 5th was his birthday. Through some interviews, we've learned that he always wanted to play Percy Jackson. He even has a special connection with Percy and his birthday. Do you know what this connection is? And the second question is, Adam Copeland plays Ares in Percy Jackson and the Olympians. He's also a professional wrestler. Do you know what his ring name is? And just a heads up, I'm not in any way familiar with any wrestling terms, so if he has multiple, I'm going with the most well-known one. As always, you can DM me your answers on Instagram at Delphi_Dispatches_pod, and we'll reveal the answers next episode. And we're coming to an end with, of course, my favorite segment, mythical music. A lot of people had a jump scare when Lin-Manuel Miranda showed up in the trailer. My jump scare for this series was when suddenly, out of nowhere, What Is Love by Hathaway started playing. And of course, I needed to include this song in the mythical music playlist. Check the playlist out on Spotify and also now on YouTube if you wanna dance to the songs we hear in the series and fitting to what we're talking about. And that concludes another adventure with Delphi Dispatches. Thank you, Demigods, for joining me on today's quest. Please consider subscribing to the podcast. And if you want to connect with me on Instagram, just follow at Delphi_Dispatches_pod for updates and a fun community. This has been Martina signing off until next time. And remember, the real world is where the monsters are.